2026 is here, y'all, and I have a lot of questions about where the music industry is going to go. Will an AI song crack the Hot 100? What record label will dominate this year? And can Spotify and the music industry ever figure out how to get along? We're here to talk about all of that and more on our first episode back for the new year. Liz, Dan, and Bill, welcome to On The Record.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for being here. So to kick off, I feel like we need to explain one thing that's very important, which is what Dan decided to wear today. I'm sure there's some people who are just listening to this and can't see it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, we did discuss briefly wearing matching T-shirts, but we just kind of couldn't pull it together in time. So I decided to wear this, which is, from my understanding, the oldest known map of the contiguous United States, focusing on the Rohan and Gondor regions.
Oh, okay, of course.
I did explain to Dan that all my Lord of the Rings apparel was at the dry cleaner.
Yeah,
but
just tough timing, really, when it came down to it.
Were you going to come as like Gandalf himself?
Yeah. Are you reading my text? How did you know that? I had the whole beard. It was great.
Okay, well, to get started here today, so this is going to be a conversation all about predictions and questions that we have for 2026. But I thought we'd start by just talking about 2025 a little bit, since that just ended. And I'm still thinking about a lot of the stuff that we were working on then. And a lot of that stuff is going to carry on into 2026. Liz, I'll start with you. Can you tell me about one of the biggest stories that you worked on in 2025?
Yeah. So I cover financial news for Billboard, a lot of catalog deals, a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And the main blockbuster story was actually like one afternoon's worth of work for us. And it was probably Taylor Swift buying back the rights to her catalog.
Yeah.
I say it was a small story because it was just the final, event of like this 10-year saga that she has gone through. But it was really significant because it's been such a critical story for Billboard to cover over the years. Like one of the major salvos in her war to get back her rights and to publicize that she wanted to own all of her music. She did like from the stage of Billboard's Women in Music event. And she was wearing that famous dress, the white dress that has the lyrics of her songs from her early albums. She consolidated ownership and in doing it, put a bow around this whole saga, making it work out for her happily. And according to the people who sold to her, Shamrock Holdings, they said it worked out for them too. So,
do you think that they would admit if it didn't work out though? Like, I feel like everyone in catalog
but
deals likes to talk about how good it was for everyone.
Totally. But this was one of those funny moments where Taylor's power worked it in a counterintuitive way. Taylor's camp helped us understand that she paid basically the sale price for it. So not a premium, not $1 extra. That looks like it probably wasn't the case, but, nobody's actually going to say they made a profit off of it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that what's so interesting about this deal is that it really was the awakening for the general public about catalog deals. This was not something that anyone cared about before.
No, I shared this with you guys earlier, but like, it was a Friday when that news broke, and it was right before noon. And I live on a very quiet block on the Upper West Side. And no kidding, like people started blasting Cruel Summer out their windows when they had a New York Times alert that Taylor Swift bought back the rights to her first 6 albums.
If you need an example of how powerful Taylor Swift is, she made regular people understand the distinction between compositions and sound recordings.
And master recordings and the value of that. Yeah.
I was listening back to her podcast with Travis Kelce, and it was so interesting hearing her explain it. And she explained the difference between masters and composition in a very succinct way. I was like, she's probably had to do this a million times. And so have we.
Yeah,
so all of us.
It's our struggle.
Yeah. But that's a great one, Liz. Dan, what about you? What's one of the big stories that you covered in 2025?
So I'm currently the director of business news, but before that I covered the record labels for half a decade or more. And so 2 of the stories that I wrote in early 2025 were sort of 2 companies that really were coming into their own, one being Island Records and the other being Empire. The Empire story was a cover story that was focused on their founder and CEO, Ghazi, who was just coming into this period where, with his artist Shaboozey, had just tied the then record, although Mariah Carey broke it, with All I Want for Christmas is You. But Shaboozey, with a bar song, Tipsy, had just tied the then record for longest reign at #1 on the Hot 100, which was really like a crowning achievement of what Ghazi had built with Empire. And that's continued throughout 2025 and into the early part of this year. And then Island, really, with this latest kind of leadership group that had come in, Justin Ishak and Imran Majid, who had come in as co-CEOs, and really from Sabrina Carpenter to Chappell Roan, that really, really blew up in 2024 into 2025. Both of them had been nominated in all 4 of the big 4 categories of the Grammys in early 2025, which is something that had never happened before for any one label. And then they've really continued that throughout 2025 as well, with Olivia Dean and Lola Young now, who both this year are nominated for Best New Artist. And it's pretty rare for any label to have 2 Best New Artists nominees 2 years in a row. And then Sabrina also got nominated for Album of the Year. And one of my favorite stats is she is just the 5th artist since 1980 to have Album of the Year nominations in back-to-back years.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Seems crazy.
Taylor has done it a
Wow.
couple times. Kanye did it. Lady Gaga did it with The Fame and The Fame Monster. I kind of feel like that's cheating a little bit, but what am I to say? And then Billy Joel, I believe.
Wow. That's interesting. I mean, it is really interesting to see how fast fortunes can change for labels. I feel like we weren't talking too much about Island just even a few years ago, and now it's something we talk about all the time and all their continued success. I've been really watching Remy Wolf. She's one of my favorite artists. She's also on Island. I'm like waiting on her big moment. She definitely has a huge fan base already, but I think that they still have plenty of artists like on the bench that are ready to go into like the major
Gigi
leagues.
Perez would be another.
Yeah.
The Last Dinner Party.
Yeah.
And they've really leaned into this partnership with Capital UK, which is the label obviously in England that had signed Olivia and Lola initially, and The Last Dinner Party actually. So they have a really good kind of transcontinental thing going on too.
And Bill, what about you? What was your big story of 2025 you'd like to highlight?
So I'm the legal reporter here at Billboard, covering any big legal battles between record labels and big stars. And there was, I think there were probably cases that were a bigger deal to the industry itself than this, but the biggest story by far was the Diddy case. It's sort of hard to get bigger than that. This global tabloid sensational story about this guy who was really one of the most powerful people in the music industry for 25 years and an artist, an iconic artist, and a producer and everything else, and
Business icon. I mean, fashion icon.
Right, Ciroc and all that, and then it all came crashing down, and he got these, first it started with the civil lawsuits, and then it blossomed into this criminal indictment accusing him of racketeering and sex trafficking and a lot of really heinous stuff. And it was a circus. I was down at the courthouse for the trial, and I was sitting like 3 rows behind him in the courtroom. There was like a 700 person line to get into the building. It was sort of a sensational story, and just to watch it play out and to see how it all shook out, which is, he was convicted, but the prosecutors sort of overshot on the case, and now we're into the appeal. So it's a big case to watch in 2026 as well. It was a massive, massive story for 2025.
Okay, well, I'll throw in my biggest story of 2025 as well, because I think we have to mention it at some point. We always have to talk about AI. And that's something that I reported on a lot this year. So did Bill. Honestly, everyone's reporting on it at this point. It's become such a big story. It used to be a niche thing. It's not anymore.
We needed your tutelage so many times this year on Deadline.
It honestly started as a sub beat for you.
Yeah.
As just like a very small thing while you were doing the publishing beat. And then at some point, those two things flipped.
Yeah. I mean, it started as something that I took interest in because I thought that this was really going to affect the songwriting process, which songwriters are signed to publishers if you're someone who isn't super familiar with music business terms. So I kind of saw it as like a songwriting story and a creativity story. And it's transformed from there into being the biggest disruptive force this industry has seen in a decade. Nothing this big since probably the dawn of streaming, I'd say.
Yeah.
Massive moneymaker for establishment and tech.
Yeah. And so in 2025, I think the big story around AI, I think there's like two different things I could say. But one is that we're finally getting to a place where music companies are coming to the table with AI companies in forming licenses. I think 2024 was the year of penalizing AI companies from the music business perspective. So filing lawsuits like Universal Music Group, Warner Music Group, and Sony Music coming together and suing Suno and Udio. That was the big case of 2024. We're starting to see the resolution of that in 2025, late 2025. Warner has made a deal with Suno, so that settles their part of the lawsuit. UMG and Sony are still pursuing the lawsuit, but I feel like it's only a matter of time before we see more headlines around that.
Yeah.
And then Udio, Suno's competitor, has also made a deal with Universal and with Warner. So Sony's still pursuing their part of the lawsuit, but for the most part, things seem to be wrapping up and people seem to be finding solutions that they're okay with or things that they can at least live with for the next few years. I mean, I could talk about this all day, but let's get to 2026 and some questions that we have for 2026. So I got this beautiful vase from Target this morning, the Target in Times Square, shout out. It's open like basically 24 hours.
It's beautiful this time of year.
I got a Brita filter from there. It's fantastic. Great experience.
Hey, I mean, it was convenient. It was convenient. So I just have a bunch of strips of paper with questions on it, and we're just going to go around and everyone's going to select a question, and we're just going to talk through our thoughts on it. So who knows if our predictions will come true? I do think we're pretty well informed between all of us, having a finance reporter, a label reporter, a legal reporter, and a publishing AI reporter. So,
yeah.
Okay, let's
All
go
things
for
tech.
it. Okay, this continues the AI debate, which is, will an AI song crack the Hot 100 this year? So I guess I'll start off on this one. I think yes. I think it will. I think all sorts of charts, whether it's Billboard or otherwise, you're going to see more and more AI songs. That We Are Charlie Kirk song that ended up on the top of the Spotify Viral 50. I mean, it's going to keep happening. And eventually there's going to be an AI song that ends up gaining enough mainstream popularity that it does end up on the Hot 100. But I will say, I think it's important to distinguish that this could be a fully AI generated song or just a regular artist, maybe that we all know and love, who starts using AI and is being honest about it, and using AI as an assistive tool. I could see something like that happening.
So I think there's two elements to this. One is that in most of the charts that we've seen these AI-assisted songs show up in are download charts, what you had said.
Not many people are downloading
those tend to have a very low threshold of a couple thousand downloads. And they don't appear on the streaming charts or the hot charts or anything like that blend metrics.
And that are harder to get on.
Well, at the same time, I think all it really takes is one of those internet phenomenons that will suddenly blow up and that, all of a sudden there's so much interest and then that boosts streaming. And then you'll start to see these songs kind of pop up on charts that eventually will, I agree with you, wind up on the Hot 100 at some point.
What Kristin said about, the idea of whether people are going to be honest about this, and that if the extent to which you use it, it raises difficult questions about whether you can have any rights to your song if you used AI to write big portions of it, and what's to stop people from just simply not disclosing that. And so I think it raises really difficult questions, even from like a rhetorical standpoint of how we refer to this music as AI. It's just blending and becoming impossible to know, I think, is going to be a thing we see in 2026.
Do you think we'll see any more labels sign more admittedly AI artists the way we saw Hallwood Media sign Xania Monet?
So that's a really good point. And I mean, I think it goes back to the lawsuits with Suno and Udio, which to this point, it seems have blocked out the major labels, at least from engaging with those kinds of artists while their parent companies are involved in the litigation against them. As those deals get settled, I think some of those shackles kind of come off, those guardrails kind of come off. And I think you will see who is opportunistic about it or who wants to take, some sort of moral stand on behalf of their own human artists, or I mean, I think there's a lot of different outcomes that you could see, and that there are so many different labels operating under different models with different goals that, there will be a lot of differentiation there.
Yeah.
Also, what's the holdup? Why is UMG not? Why are they still?
Well,
Warner went with Suno, and nobody else has.
So it'll be interesting to see in the next couple months if UMG and Sony come to the table with Suno. My thoughts behind that is Suno got a much more, you could argue, an advantageous deal than
Definitely.
Udio did.
Mhm.
So these deals are not created equal. I think it's very easy to read the headlines and not read past it and think that, okay, they're just settling. They probably got similar terms. They're similar companies. Udio agreed when they worked with Universal. Universal was the first one to do the deal with Udio. Udio agreed to completely pivot its company from being one that creates songs that are totally new at the click of a button to pivoting their service to only using licensed material. They are going to relaunch. It's going to be a walled garden. You can't take songs out of Udio anymore. Whereas right now you can download them and upload them to streaming services, do whatever you want to them. And also, they're not making brand new songs. You get to remix and play with licensed pre-existing songs that the labels provide them. That, you could argue, really put some handcuffs on Udio and some of the stuff that they were able to do before. Suno, on the other hand, is not really having to change its service based on its deal with Warner. It seems like Warner was more willing to kind of go with the flow with Suno.
Yeah.
I imagine that the holdup behind the scenes with UMG, although I am not privy to those conversations, would be that UMG would probably prefer a deal that's closer to Udio, and Suno is maybe not down for that.
Well, and from a negotiation leverage standpoint, Suno has struck this deal with Warner, and they, presumably want to get full licensing. They want to get Sony and UMG in the ecosystem as well. UMG has a lot of leverage to just hold out, and you can't really get the full product across the finish line until you have all three. We've seen that with music tech over and over and over again over the last 20 years. It's sort of an all or nothing proposition.
Totally.
And so in a lot of ways, UMG and Sony have a lot of leverage to sort of get better terms. I don't have any inside info there, but so I could see it dragging out for a while just as the negotiations go forward.
Well, and I think what's interesting is that it became so apparent when TikTok and Universal had their showdown at the beginning of 2024, I believe it was, where Universal pulled its music off of TikTok, and it wound up affecting a lot of artists and songwriters who were signed to Sony and Warner, because especially on the publishing side, there's a lot of overlap between all of those companies.
There's a lot of songwriters on every pop song.
Yeah, exactly.
So those songwriters are all signed to different companies.
Yeah. So if one company is pulling out, that affects the other two companies. On the other side, if one company is opting in, that also affects the other two companies. And so I think that became very apparent in that deal, and it's still a dynamic that's very at play here as well.
So let's move to the next question.
Should we just talk about AI for the entire show?
I know. This is like
Don't
all of
threaten
my
us with a good
episodes
time.
devolve. Okay, Bill,
All right, what do we
select
have?
something.
Do you want me to take this or?
You know what? Yeah, take it.
It's a
Okay,
very
great.
nice vase.
Pass it down
Perfect.
the line.
Yeah, I'm excited to have
Great
it.
vase.
Drake's lawsuit against UMG over Not Like Us was one of the biggest stories of 2025. Where do things stand now, and how is it going to play out in 2026? So this was one of my biggest stories of the year. It was Drake filing a defamation lawsuit against UMG.
Who is his label?
Yes, his label in his longtime home, where he was as successful as you could be, and filed a lawsuit against them over Kendrick's Not Like Us, which was a massive hit. It was as big as you can get. It was
song and record of the year for the Grammys.
It was the centerpiece of the Super Bowl halftime show. It's it's hard to get much bigger than that song. They're playing the 3-chord song in baseball stadiums on the Oregon. Like, everyone knows this song. So it had a very famous line that said that Drake was a pedophile, and he filed a lawsuit not against Kendrick but against UMG, saying that the label had not only defamed him by releasing the song at all, but by boosting it into what it became, which was this massive, massive cultural moment. And I think the biggest thing when I think about the lawsuit is the amount of shock that we had when it first happened, which Dan and I were in the office, and we got rumors that there was something like this coming. And I said to him, there's no way that this happens. There's no
Yeah.
way that someone in the middle of a rap in a diss track files a defamation lawsuit against someone. It would be reputational self-immolation.
Right. Much less the whole hip hop aspect of it, which is like you're in the middle of a gigantic rap beef. Like,
Yeah.
you don't just get the lawyers involved. In
Exactly.
The middle of that.
But then here we are. It happened. Unsurprisingly, Drake took some hits in, reputationally for doing this. That it people ridiculed what he was doing and said that this was antithetical to hip hop. And we were talking about authenticity before. Hip hop is another genre that authenticity and realness is such an important part of it. And so he took this reputational hit, and then he lost the lawsuit, which the judge ruled, as many people expected, that this is not the kind of thing that you can file a defamation lawsuit over. You can typically sue for defamation over a statement that can be proven true or false.
Mm-hmm.
And that excludes things that are opinion. If I say
or expressions of art, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And if I said Kristin stinks, there's
Not true.
which I would never say,
Not
to be
true.
clear.
For the record.
You can't prove that true or false.
record.
It's just a statement of opinion. And that's what this judge said here. When you're making these hyperbolic statements, especially in the context of a rap battle, people are not expecting what she said was sober facts. They're expecting you to just say ridiculous things to insult the other person. So that was why she dismissed the case. And now here we are heading into 2026, and Drake is appealing the case, keeping it going.
Not letting it die.
Not letting it die, which you can discuss the PR angle of it till you're blue in the face. But he has an interesting legal case, which is, this is the big question is, did the average listener think that he was really calling, that Kendrick was really calling him a pedophile? Was he saying, you are a pedophile? Or was he saying, some more amorphous, hyperbolic thing? And I think a lot of people would say that he was just calling him a pedophile. So you get into, I think that, and that's what Drake's lawyers are going to argue, which is that there are big First Amendment reasons for why you want to be really light touch with bringing defamation lawsuits in against works of art.
Yeah.
But that in this context, maybe people really took it as a direct statement of fact. That's what they're going to argue before the appeals court, and we'll see how that goes.
I just feel like in rap music, the rap industry has been fighting for so long to make sure that rap lyrics are not used in court against a rapper, to allow rappers to freely express themselves, to brag, to make up stories, to say whatever they want in their art, and not be seen as having actually committed a crime or whatever it is. And this just kind of, if Drake were to win, that just totally takes that back.
Well,
like, what does he want? Does he want UMG to not release, to censor one of their artists?
Right. And that's where another aspect of it, which was just so unbelievable, I think, about it, was that, he and Kendrick are both signed to Universal. If he's saying you should censor a song like Not Like Us, he's inviting censorship of himself as well. And to your point, that whole argument about the use of lyrics in criminal cases has been such a huge deal. And I don't think anyone in the creative community would ever support the idea that what you say in a song could be used against you in a criminal proceeding. And this just flies in the face of that. And it's just bizarre.
I will tie us up here with the issue of rap on trial has been a really, really big issue that I've been covering for a really long time. And back in 2021 or 2022, there was a letter signed by many, many prominent artists saying that rap music should not be treated literally and that it should be taken as a form of art and should not be used in court. Drake was one of the signatories of that letter, which was brought up in the case. So all the legal experts who have really followed that issue closely have weighed in on this case exactly like you just did. So it's a fascinating case and a good one to watch in 2026.
Dan, how about you pull another question for 2026?
This is such a nice vase.
I know. Thank you, Target. Target's our sponsor today. No, they're not. They literally did not sponsor this.
Specifically the Times Square Target.
Yeah.
Will Universal's downtown acquisition go through, and what does that mean for indie music? So to quickly describe this, Universal Music Group's Virgin Music Group division is in the process of acquiring Downtown Music Group, which is one of the biggest indie distribution companies, which also has several other different divisions that deal in publishing and rights management.
Huge company.
Massive, yes. The deal is $775 million, has been met with vehement opposition from the independent music community, which is focused on the broader idea in the industry of consolidation. There has been a bit of an arms race towards vacuuming up market share from some of the majors. And the independent community has essentially looked at this deal as, if you take another independent distributor off the market, from our options, we suddenly don't have many other options to get our music to market without dealing with some of the major labels in some capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a business concern of theirs. That is an ideological concern of theirs, indie versus major. And there is competition concerns with that.
The part
Which you can, speak to part of it as well.
that's the front side of their argument, and then the nugget of their argument that actually has regulators interested, and that actually might shape the outcome of this deal, making it not an entire buyout, but a buyout of most of downtown, just not all of it, is that the indie organizations said, but wait, also this one company within downtown, Curve Royalty Systems, has specific access to data that we provided as clients, that if UMG were to acquire that as part of this entire buyout, that'll put it upstream from us. So not just, it essentially makes it a vertical monopoly. I'm sorry. Not entirely a vertical monopoly, but it gives it a lever above all of them to know the pipeline of new music coming out, further advantaging they're giving them a better competitive edge. Because basically, if you know who's paying royalties out to whom, then you know who your clients are, your partners are, and you can go and poach them. And that's what European regulators say. Okay, actually, that specifically is probably problematic. Mm-hmm. They've spent like 6 months looking into it, and it looks like they might force a sale of Curve for the deal to get approved.
And so the other side of that is Universal saying, we are very separate from Virgin. Virgin saying that that if they were able to acquire Downtown, everything would be, managed separately. There would be a firewall there. Don't worry about the data, basically.
They've also said it doesn't matter that much to them in the big picture. They still want Downtown, there's so much more that they could do.
Yeah. They want it for market share purposes. They want to grow their distribution operations, especially as that seems to be where the industry has been going for a while, towards these, non-exclusive distribution deals. As to the question as to whether or not it will go through, I think probably, but to Liz's point, there will have to be some divestments, and whether that is that one division or Universal having to sell off other parts of things or whatever. I do think that they will find a way to make it happen. However, even as that brings one indie distribution company under the purview of the majors, I don't necessarily think that the sky is falling there, because it does leave this big market opportunity. And there are other distribution companies that have not yet come to the United States, or that haven't necessarily gotten into the white glove service of indie label distribution instead of just artist distribution. It does provide an opportunity for other companies to come in and be like, we'll take this segment, we'll help you out now here. Let's see how this kind of develops moving forward.
Okay, Liz, you pick one.
I don't like that one. Can I pick Oh, and I got one from me. How will the catalog market change, and what major catalogs will be up for sale? Apart from Taylor, the other massive catalog sale deal that happened in 2025 was the Weeknd. And this was really a work in progress. It was a long-term search for both the right deal and the right partners. And to their credit, Abel Tesfaye and Sal Slaby, his long-term manager and the leader of his, really his business empire, they found the right deal. Like they're very happy with the outcome. So they sold The Weeknd. We can't say it was a straight sale. It was a structured partnership where the artist received financing in the form of a royalty-backed note, which is basically a private loan from a Swiss private credit company called Partners Group. Never heard of them, but remember that name because they're very important behind the
Very
scene.
memorable.
Right.
Yeah, that is
They
so
are.
big.
Almost
Partner Corp.
Yeah, designed to be behind the scenes there.
Very Swiss. And that was a part of it, but then it got somewhere in the ballpark of like $750 million worth of financing, basically, to consolidate his catalog and put it in a holding company that he and that The Weeknd and Lyric Capital jointly manage.
God, that's
So this
confusing.
is a really
Yeah.
it's a
Jeez.
totally new structure and way about thinking for an artist that is very pro artist. He's getting exactly what he wants. He didn't sell his assets outright. He consolidated ownership of them. Maybe he might have lost some share, but by doing it with a captive partner in this way, he will forever have say over what's done with his music.
Right. A seat at the table.
Yeah. And a seat and a stake.
Yeah.
So do you think more artists that have leverage like that are going to follow
Exactly.
suit?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think that more artists who know what their work is worth are going to leverage that.
Well,
We have like big picture factors here. You have with Generation Z, the most financially literate generation ever, particularly in the United States. And you have the most affluent generation ever in North America.
Gen Z
Yes.
doesn't feel that way.
I know.
What
I
happened-
know.
what
Yeah,
happened
That's
to the
another
millennials,
It's okay.
problem.
man?
We're working on it. We're working on it on behalf of Gen Z.
These are just factors that contribute to the average working artist having more information about how to make their money, make their art, make more money for them.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to see them bringing that leverage and that know-how to more conversations. So that's going to
Mhm.
change the catalog market big picture. The other thing is the money. Where's the money coming from? And what form is it coming in now? It's no longer just straight private equity at all. That's like so 3 years ago. It is now reaching the level of funny money. It is tens of billions flowing in a single quarter.
I would just like to thank Liz for not using the word unique there in describing that deal, because as you guys well know, unique is a banned word under my purview at Billboard.
Oh,
This is
and the
true.
other catalogs that might come up for sale are maybe Metallica this year.
Ooh.
Been told of
That could be
a
big.
very big
Wow.
metal catalog. Definitely more current chart-topping country artists
Mhm.
because they have, maybe some of the unique
Wow.
One of a kind.
Oh,
Say
no.
one of
one
a
of a
kind.
kind
We were so
machinations of how the
close.
Nashville
Strike one.
business, just the ways that Nashville business works. Like it is such a more business forward genre because you've worked with professional songwriters for all these. People know the value of their works and they monetize that so that they can go out and do more work. And K-pop. You're going to see a big K-pop sale, but I can't say which.
Ooh.
Wow.
Oh,
Liz.
she has some
Who wants the
off-record
jug?
information, clearly.
Things are percolating
Okay,
here.
wait. Pass me the vase.
Are we going
Um,
vase or vase?
Vase? You know what? This
I called
is
it a jug, I think.
a joke. That's insulting for this one. Okay,
go
we're gonna
vase.
pull like one more, and then I think we'll move on. So I'm gonna cheat here. Okay, I'm gonna cheat here and see which one's the best.
Wow, the integrity of the
Wow.
vase is being
I-
challenged
Yeah.
here. This group has done a really good
Yeah,
job
we're-
at speaking quickly
It's
and
like-
succinctly.
Yeah.
I know.
of
Hopefully y'all have
business
enjoyed
reporters.
Work on your sound
the
bites.
depth of our conversation. Okay, so this is one for Bill. What will happen with the DOJ's lawsuit against Ticketmaster? I think everyone cares about that. So
Yeah. I mean, this is a thing we've been talking about since 2010, since since Live Nation and Ticketmaster merged. It's this big gripe that Live Nation and Ticketmaster run the whole live music industry, is sort of the popular perception among some people. And 2 years ago in 2024, we saw the DOJ at a moment where I think there was the political sentiment to do it. Go after them very aggressively in court and file a lawsuit, an antitrust lawsuit seeking to break up the company. So time flies. 2 years later, we are getting to the make or break moment of the case. Live Nation has filed their brief saying this case should not go to trial, that you spent 2 years digging through all of our records, our emails, everything, and you didn't find a whole lot. DOJ begs to differ and says that they can prove that for instance, if you don't use Ticketmaster as your exclusive ticketing agent at your venue, that you will get fewer shows from Live Nation. They say they can make that case in court. So the judge will decide that in the coming weeks or months, and then we will get a trial in March. Wow. It's a huge case because it's not just a huge case for the music industry. It is. And, there's other cases that have been brought against Live Nation by the FTC over their ticketing practices with scalpers and all this stuff. So there's a big, the big moment for Live Nation, but it's a big case for competition law in America in general. The government has, in this modern, tech era, they have tried to they went after Google, they went after Meta, they're going after Apple right now. They're trying to rein in these giant monolithic tech companies that have grown up over the last 25 years. And they've had kind of mixed results with it. And so this is another big inflection moment of, can the government effectively police the way that companies grow and the way that companies dominate the markets that they're in? So we will see what happens, but it's a really, really big case.
I'm really interested to see where that goes, especially in March when that trial starts.
Yeah, we will see.
Okay, so that concludes our questions and predictions for 2026. Now we're going to quickly go through some of our ins and outs for 2026. So something that you're going to see as in and out. I don't know how to describe that any better. Okay.
It's like the take on the New Year's resolution kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, so Liz, let's start with you. What's your in and your out for 2026?
In more artist involved catalog deals, more of these structures that are not vanilla at all, that keep the artist in control of what's done with their music. My out, Hype America, maybe. I think they're gonna have they have had a rebuilding phase, and I think it's still continuing. Hybe is so influential still in South Korea and K-pop, but they've had a lot going on there too, with leadership issues, regulatory issues, investigations. They pivoted and focused a lot on Latin America, and they are having some wins there. But I think that let's wait and see. 2026 might be a build year.
Well, they just hired a new president as well in Ethiopia, and she's a great leader as well. And I think that we'll, coming into any company, it takes a while.
Yeah,
Totally.
planting the seeds, probably 2026. Maybe we see something 2027.
Mm-hmm.
That's great, Liz. Dan, what about you? What are your ins and outs of 2026?
So my ins was something that we had talked a little bit about earlier, which is just more nuanced language around how we talk about AI in music. Because I think that it's become very clear in listening to certain people talk about AI, whether or not they really understand what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I think even at the beginning of 2025, you could speak a lot more in generalities and people would be like, oh, yeah, definitely. And I think as the year has progressed, and certainly now as we're going into 2026, it takes a lot more nuance to talk about, wait, what are we talking about when we're talking about AI in music?
Mm-hmm.
And
we have that discussion in the newsroom.
Yeah,
about how to put it in headlines, how to put it into stories.
And in what language we're using.
Yeah.
And, whether it's AI assisted, fully AI generated, how do we know those things?
Yes.
And what you were saying earlier too, Bill, about like, are people going to disclose these things, and how does that get murkier as we go? And I think that one of the things that, obviously we focus on a lot is language and how we talk about things. And I think that there will have to be a lot more nuance in that with that going to 2026. And then my out is just not caring about what other people think anymore. Maybe that's just me.
Just a personal thing.
That's just a personal thing. It's certainly why I wore my contiguous map of the United States sweatshirt today.
If you were worried about what I thought, I think it looks great, man.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that. You know, like, thank you. So, but I don't care about what you think.
That is
unfortunately,
out.
because
To be clear.
that is out.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, Bill, what about you? In and out 2026.
My in is opting out,
Oh
and my out is opting in.
oh God.
Okay. All right. For those who don't speak this language, please explain what that means.
This is a reference to, I'm being a little ridiculous, but it's a reference to the settlements that were struck over AI, the AI music platforms. And when these deals were reached, there was a lot of talk of, we're going to have opt-ins and the artists are going to have full control. It's great for everybody. No one is going to lose here. It's going to be great. And
no one is going to do anything that they don't want to do because they're going to opt in.
Exactly.
You had to choose to be a part of it.
And that everyone, if you do opt in, you'll be paid. And there was just a lot of vague language because, that is how things work when you're working in frameworks. But I think the thing that we're going to see in 2026 is the devil is always in the details. And we're going to have to figure out the actual legal mechanics of how this works in terms of, how do you opt out? How do you opt in? What exactly are you opting out of the training data set, or are you opting out of having your name used in the outputs? How do you audit the extent to which your music was used? Is it a one-time licensing fee? Is it an ongoing thing? All of these things are going to have to be dealt with by fleets of lawyers, and it's going to be dealing with dusty contracts that you're going to have to break out of paper, out of cardboard boxes that never foresaw any of this. So I think that the big in for me is that there's going to be some disputes over how exactly this works. Once the artists and their reps really start thinking about this, these deals that were struck by the big companies, how does this affect me and how do I interface with it? And I think that we're gonna, I don't want to be cynical. I don't want to be a doomsday person, but I think we're gonna get some disputes. There's gonna be some friction over how it works.
Okay, so I'll end off with my ins and outs. My in is that I think that people are going to put more and more marketing money and marketing dollars towards real life events. I think that in an age of AI, when we can't really trust what we're seeing online, I think that people are going to really yearn for live events, special experiences with artists in person, pop-up events, that kind of stuff. So I see more of the marketing budgets going there. Additionally, my out is related to that. I think that TikTok fan pages are a little bit on the outs. It's not that I think that people are going to stop doing them. And what I mean when I say this is if I'm an artist team, I would create a bunch of fan pages for my artist and run them as if I'm a fan, but really I'm part of the artist team. So I can recirculate interview clips and
it's a classic
podcast
music business tactic right there.
AstroTurfing.
Yeah, like AstroTurfing. I think that that's still going to be popular, but I think that a lot of fans have caught on to this tactic and are familiar with it now. We heard a lot of people talk about like Somber doing it. He's an artist who's really digitally savvy. And whenever fans get fatigued by a marketing tactic, it's probably time to start moving towards something else.
Yeah.
So that's my in and out, but I have like a hot take.
Ooh,
Wow.
I have a hot take to end us on.
Excited.
I think there's going to be an artist that uses this fad of prediction markets as part of their rollout in some way. And I bring this up here because Bill, as legal reporter, I'm wondering if you feel like that's possible, and also if an artist could get themselves in a lot of trouble jumping on the trend of Kalshi and Polymarket and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if you give people advance notice and then they make a bunch of money, like if you manipulate those market, I mean, if you were dealing with a publicly traded company and you were part of the regulatory regime that exists there, and you were talking about shares of a company, it would just be insider trading. So there's a lot of ways you can get in trouble. Doing that, you could certainly do it. I'm sure if people were like, oh, everyone's speculating about when Drake's album will come out and people are gambling on that. But if the artists themselves get involved and, are making any money on that and then decide when to drop the album, Yeah, it's a legal minefield. So I
Yeah, I just okay, like to explain like my thought process on this. Well, obviously prediction markets are like everywhere. I just looked at some last night and it was super depressing
Kalshi
actually.
is definitely in the midst of a major marketing campaign right now.
America
Yes,
in
for sure.
2026
It might
is
be
a
IPO.
casino.
For sure. And I mean, I just think entertainment is like the perfect play. I mean, sports betting has been such a big thing over the last few years. When's it going to come time when people are really leaning into entertainment and trying to also transform it in the same way? We've also heard conversations over the last few years about the idea of monetizing super fandom,
Mhm.
and people have struggled to do that. I don't know, maybe if it doesn't come from the artist, is there, I don't know, some way to encourage fandoms to place bets?
I mean, you can
and
definitely
stuff
see
like
an
that?
outcome where there's a Kalshi bet on who's going to be the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
it-
there
it
is.
definitely
There is right
is.
now.
It
Yeah.
probably
may
is.
have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that there's. So I'm curious about what the actual lawsuit would look like, because this is Kalshi, for example, is all the definition of this is a private market.
Mhm.
So if Drake, in hypothetical, Drake gets involved and says, starts sprinkling Easter eggs about when his next album might come, very intentionally to this audience of investors better on Kalshi, and one party loses a lot of money. That party sues the other, like, class action of people that, like, what does this lawsuit even look like?
Well, I'm sure you sign. I'm sure
And
you
if
sign
it's a private market, do you have a case?
I'm sure you sign a very aggressive when you use these platforms. I'm sure there's a huge waiver of like that dealing with sort of like an end user license agreement.
Once again,
That-
read the addendum.
Read-
right? Get a lawyer.
Read the fine print. So potentially users are signing away their right to do this kind of stuff. I'm sure there's an arbitration agreement that says you have to deal with it through private arbitration, not through a lawsuit. But it just. There's a reason why we wrote insider trading laws, and now we've turned the entire. And there's a reason why sports gambling is a very highly regulated industry. All that crazy small print that every time you see a gambling ad is because there are serious regulatory regimes in every state that has legal gambling. So, I don't know. It's a mess. I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I certainly, if I was an attorney advising a artist about doing that kind of campaign, I would say be very careful.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise it as a hot take. I was thinking about it last night, and I was like, that is monetizing super fandom, I guess, in some way.
It's gonna happen.
Someone's gonna figure it out. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but just placing it here, y'all come back to On the Record in like a year or so, and I will say I told you so.
Yeah, I'll come back now.
Okay, so how I end every episode of On the Record is I ask my guests to make me a playlist. And so I'm going to have each of you I usually have people pick 3 songs, but since I have 3 guests, I'm going to have each of you pick 1 song. So it's all based on the same prompts every time. The first prompt is a song that you can no longer gatekeep. And I'm going to throw it to Dan because Dan knows a lot of niche songs. So give us something good.
When Kristin was setting me up with this, she referenced specifically that I have been listening to nothing but African music for about half a decade now, if not longer.
Exclusively.
And I'm not sure if I gatekept this because I tweeted a lot about it before I left Twitter like 3 or 4 years ago. It might be like the last tweet that I had done, but there was a song, I want to say 2021, from these 3 guys in Lagos, Nigeria, called Don't Call Me. It's by Lil Kesh featuring Xenia and produced by Young John. And it is the first time I heard it, I was like, this might be the best song I've ever heard in my life. I spent the entire rest of the year going around saying, this is the best song of the year. This is the best song of the year. It's been 4 years and I think it's still the best song of the year. And it's just like, there's just like a bounce to it. There's an unbridled joy to it. I think all 3 of them are amazing artists in and of their own right. And just having them on that song, it just brings a smile to my face every time I hear it. So it's called Don't Call Me.
Okay. We'll definitely have to look that up. And then another one of my prompts is a favorite throwback. So I'm going to give that one to Liz. So a song that's over 10 years old.
Oh,
Leaving the entire world's catalog of music for you to select from, just to narrow it down.
I had a throwback, but it was not that throwbacky. I guess it was only like 5 years old. I was
You
going
know
to
what?
say.
Okay, near catalog. Yeah, we can.
Okay.
You can do that. You can do that.
Raul Alejandro's Todo de Ti,
Nice.
which is just such a, it's just such a fun upbeat song. I actually found it. This is super lame of me. Not super lame because Leila Cabo and the Billboard Espanol team are supreme experts in the genre of all things Latin. But I got it. I was like, I'd never heard this song before until I listened to it on Billboard Latin's best 50 Latin pop songs of all
News you
time.
can use, baby.
Wow,
Yeah,
there we
it's sort of
go.
space
You can
journalism.
use.
There we
That's a
go.
great pick. That's a great pick. And then finally, a guilty pleasure. I'm going to throw that to Bill.
So, you told us what these like broad prompts were, and I was thinking about like so much of it's a hard question for me because so much of my my music consumption I feel like has some level of guiltiness to it. There's just like a lot of shame.
You
That's why I
carry a
picked you
lot
for
of
that
this
one,
with you.
obviously.
Yeah, I see.
But so there were a lot of options to pick from. But I would say, okay, so I'm gonna go with the Goo Goo Dolls' Iris, which
And I don't
yeah.
That was beautiful, Kristin.
So
Thank you.
really great quick anecdote. This was a big story. This was a big song for my wife and I, and we wanted them to play it at our wedding, and we wanted them to play it for the last song. And so we
I'm
told
sorry, you wanted the Goo Goo Dolls to play
we
it?
wanted
anyway?
we wanted Johnny Resnick to show up at our wedding.
you have to get like a rain machine to rain
yes.
on him while he's singing.
So we asked the band to play this as the final song, and they shot us an email like 3 weeks before the wedding, and they were like, "Everything looks good. We're not going to play Iris." And we were like, no, you have to.
To be clear, your wedding band,
Yeah.
not the Goo Goo
Yeah,
Dolls.
no,
Okay.
our wedding band, our like 3-piece wedding band. So we get on the phone with them. We're like, you have to, like, it's our song. You got to play it. And the guy goes, "You're aware that song has like a 7-piece string ensemble in it, right?" And we're like, "Yes." And he's like, "We can't do that. There's 3 of us." So I was like, "Dude, play the recording. We don't care. Play it." And it all played, and it was great. So
Wait, so did the band end up
the
playing?
band
it?
played, and they just played the recording in the background, and it's sort of, I mean, everybody
Okay.
was in the bag by that point anyway. So it was fine. So it was great. Everyone had a drunken sing along to Iris as one should at their wedding.
That's beautiful. Okay, perfect place to end it. Dan, Liz, and Bill, thank you so much for coming to On The Record. We'll have to have you back at the end of 2026 to see if we're right about any of this. Thank you so much to Dan Rice, Bill Donahue, and Liz Dilts Marshall from my team for joining me today to talk about the 2026 year ahead. Now it's time to dive into our charts roundup to learn more about this week's biggest movers and shakers. Here is the top 10 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart for the week of January 24th. Coming in at number 10 this week is Opalite by Taylor Swift. 9 is Folded by Kehlani. 8th this week is Back to Friends by Somber. 7th is End of Beginning by Joe. In the 6th slot is Choosin' Texas by Ella Langley. 5 is Ordinary by Alex Warren. 4th is Man I Need by Olivia Dean. In the 3rd position is Golden by Huntrix. 2nd this week is The Fate of Ophelia by Taylor Swift. And finally, the number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart for the week of January 24th, it's I Just Might by Bruno Mars for its first week at number 1. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of On The Record. If you like today's show, please give us a follow on Instagram at Billboard On The Record, where you can find new clips of our show every single week. We'd also appreciate it if you give our show like a rating, a like, a thumbs up, all those good things. They really help a show like ours to grow and to reach new people. Again, I'm your host, Kristin Robinson, and tune in next week for another peek behind the curtain of the music business. I'll see you then.